My daughter evicted me after my wife's funeral. Then 31 folders changed everything. The eviction notice was still warm from the printer when my daughter slid it across the kitchen table, the same table where I'd fed her oatmeal for 18 years. I remember the exact sound it made, a soft paper whisper against the oak, Margaret's oak, the table she'd picked out from a garage sale in 1987, the one she'd refinished herself with a rented sander and too much white wine, laughing until she cried because the fumes kept getting to her. That table had hosted 34 Thanksgivings, 2 wedding rehearsal dinners, one of them my daughter Claire's, and just 3 days before, the funeral reception for my wife of 41 years. The ink on the notice was still sharp. 30 days, vacate the premises. I am Daniel Calloway. I am 67 years old, and on the worst morning of my life I sat at my dead wife's table and read a legal document prepared by my own child. People say grief is a wave. They're wrong. Grief is not a wave. Waves pass through you and move on. Grief is more like gravity. It doesn't come and go. It just presses down constantly, invisibly, and you spend every minute of every day pretending you're not being crushed. Margaret died on a Tuesday, pancreatic cancer. We'd had 7 months between the diagnosis and the end, which sounds like a mercy until you live it. 7 months of watching the woman who laughed too loudly at her own jokes, who sang off-key to Fleetwood Mac while cooking Sunday pasta, who still held my hand in movie theaters at 63, slowly become someone I barely recognized, and then she was gone. The funeral was on Friday. My son James flew in from Seattle. He's the good one, I know. You're not supposed to say that about your children, but parents think it. James held me up through the graveside service, literally, because my knees kept buckling. He whispered in my ear, "Dad." She knew. She always knew, and I understood exactly what he meant. Claire organized everything. The flowers, the catering, the obituary in the Millbrook Gazette. She was efficient and precise and barely looked at me. I told myself it was her way of grieving. I told myself she was holding it together so the rest of us could fall apart. I made a lot of excuses for Claire that weekend. By Sunday, James had to fly back to his wife and his kids and his real life. We embraced at the front door, Margaret's front door, the blue one she'd painted herself 2 summers ago. Peacock blue, she called it, ignoring every neighbor who said it was too bold, and James made me promise to call him every day. I promised. He cried in the driveway. I watched his rental car disappear around the corner. That left Claire. And Monday morning, over cold coffee I hadn't slept enough to remember making, she slid the paper across the table. "It's not personal, Dad." She didn't look up from her phone as she said it. I read the document twice. It was official. It cited the terms of Mom's will, which I hadn't yet had time to sit down with the attorney about, and it established Claire as the co-executor of the estate. The house apparently was not solely mine. It had been placed at some point I didn't know about in a joint trust, and Claire had decided efficiently, precisely, without sentiment, that the most practical course of action was to liquidate the asset. "The house needs to go on the market," she said. "The market's good right now. We'd be foolish to wait." I looked at the peacock blue door through the kitchen window. "Your mother has been dead for 5 days, I said. "I know that, Dad. Her reading glasses are still on the nightstand." "I know." "Then how?" "Because someone has to think clearly." She finally looked up and her eyes were dry and certain, and so much like mine that I had to look away. "Mom would have wanted this handled properly." I didn't argue. I didn't have the fight in me. I took the paper, folded it once, and put it in the breast pocket of the flannel shirt I'd worn for 3 days. Then I went upstairs, sat on the edge of our bed, picked up Margaret's reading glasses, and held them until my hands stopped shaking. I moved into the Millbrook Garden Apartments on day 27 of the 30-day notice. I didn't tell James until after. He called me within an hour of finding out Claire must have mentioned it, and his voice was so tight with controlled anger that I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "You should have called me, Dad. You should have called me the second she gave you that paper. She's your sister." "She's Dad, that doesn't," he stopped, breathed. "Do you need money? Do you need anything?" "I have my pension. I have Margaret's life insurance. I'm fine financially." "That's not what I asked." I looked around the apartment. It was a one-bedroom on the second floor, with beige walls and carpet the color of old mustard. It smelled like the cleaning product the maintenance crew used. Something chemical and faintly floral, like a hospital trying to pretend it was a garden. The furniture I'd brought barely filled the living room. Margaret's reading chair looked lost in the corner, her small collection of painted ceramic birds, robins and wrens she'd picked up over 30 years at craft fairs and antique shops, sat in a box I hadn't unpacked because I didn't know where to put them. "I'm fine," I told James. "I just need time." After we hung up, I sat in Margaret's reading chair in that mustard-carpeted apartment and thought about time, how much of it I'd spent, how little I'd paid attention, 41 years of dinners and drives and arguments about nothing, of Christmases and April evenings on the back porch, and one terrible, beautiful night in a hospital when Claire was born, and I'd sobbed in the hallway like the world was ending, not knowing then that the world was just beginning. I fell asleep in the chair with the box of ceramic birds at my feet. There had been no time, or rather, no will to go through the house properly before the sale. Claire had arranged movers. The movers had been efficient. Most of Margaret's things went into a storage unit on Route 9, a 10 by 20 orange-doored room that smelled like fiberglass and dust. I avoided it for 6 weeks. I'm not sure what changed on the Saturday I finally drove there. Maybe it was the particular quality of the autumn light, the way October sun falls low and golden in the Hudson Valley and makes everything look like it's on fire. Maybe it was that I'd been walking past her reading chair every morning and not sitting in it. Maybe I just ran out of ways to avoid myself. The storage unit had a combination padlock. The code was Margaret's birthday. Claire didn't know that. I'd said it myself. Small act of reclamation. I dialed in the numbers and lifted the door and let the smell of our old life roll over me. It took me a moment to find the light switch. When I did, the fluorescent tube stuttered on and I stood there blinking at the stacked debris of 40 years. Boxes labeled in Claire's handwriting. Furniture draped in moving blankets. Margaret's gardening tools leaning against the wall like old friends standing in a corner at a party. I didn't know what I was looking for. I moved through the stacks slowly, touching things. Her winter coats, still carrying the shape of her shoulders. A box of James's childhood artwork that she kept every piece of. The small wooden jewelry box her mother had given her that played tinny version of Claire de Lune when you opened the lid. And then behind a stack of kitchen boxes, I found the filing cabinet. It was a 2-drawer lateral cabinet, dark green, slightly dented on the left corner from the time we moved in 1998, and I'd backed the van up too close to the garage door. I'd forgotten it existed. Margaret had kept it in the back of our bedroom closet for years. I never thought to ask what was in it. It was hers, it was personal, and we understood each other's private territories. The key was in the lock. I opened the top drawer. The top drawer held 31 manila folders. They were arranged chronologically. Each had a label on the tab, not printed, but written in Margaret's handwriting, small and neat and slightly slanted to the right, the way it always was. The first was labeled simply, Daniel, Year 1. I pulled out a chair from the stack of dining furniture and sat down in that storage unit with the October wind trying to push through the gap under the door, and I opened Year 1. Inside was a letter. Daniel, you don't know I'm writing this. You're downstairs watching the game and eating cereal out of the box, which you do when you think I'm not looking, and I'm up here at the little desk by the window thinking about the year we've had. Do you remember the night in April when we drove 2 hours because I wanted to see the ocean and you didn't argue, you just got your keys? It was cold and the beach was empty and we stood there in our coats and I said, this is exactly what I needed. And you said, I know, and I believed you. I still believe you. I keep this letter because I want to remember that I am loved by someone who just gets his keys. I didn't know how long I sat there. The folders were not journals exactly. They were collections, letters, notes, newspaper clippings, photographs, receipts, ticket stubs, small pressed flowers dried flat and translucent as old paper. Each folder was a year of our marriage, documented not comprehensively but selectively, with the eye of a curator who knew which moments deserved preservation. Year 4 held the boarding pass from our first trip to Italy and a napkin on which I'd written, in my terrible handwriting, a list of Italian phrases I was trying to memorize. She'd kept the napkin. She'd written at the bottom of it in her own hand. He tried so hard and mispronounced everything, and I have never loved him more. Year 9 held a letter that began differently. Daniel, we didn't speak today. We went the whole day without speaking, and I went to bed angry, and I'm writing this instead of sleeping because I need to say something to someone. I'm afraid we are getting lost. I'm afraid that the children and the work and the ordinary business of being alive is slowly, quietly replacing the thing that makes us us. I don't know how to say this to you. I don't know if you feel it too. I'm going to reach for your hand tomorrow morning. I'm going to reach for it before I even say good morning, and we'll see. Beneath the letter was a small square of paper, added later. I could tell by the different ink. Slightly faded, it said only he took it. Year 12 had the program from James's second grade play and a photograph of Claire at age 8 asleep in the backseat of our old station wagon with her cheek pressed against the window and her hair going everywhere. On the back of the photo in Margaret's hand, she looks like her father when she sleeps. Something softens. I sat with Year 12 for a long time. Claire, my efficient, precise, dry-eyed daughter, sleeping in the backseat with something softened. Year 17 held a letter that made me laugh out loud in that cold, fluorescent storage unit, and the sound of my own laughter startled me. Daniel, you fixed the dishwasher tonight even though we both knew you were going to break it worse. Before you fixed it, and you did break it worse, you broke it spectacularly. There was water on the ceiling somehow. I still don't understand how, and then you fixed it. It runs now. It runs quietly, which it has never done. You are infuriating and competent, and mine. Year 17. Can you believe it? Year 23, Year 31, Year 38. The later years were more reflective. The cancer came in the fourth-to-last folder. She'd written about it with a directness that was almost clinical at first, then slowly, over subsequent notes, more tender. The doctor used the word aggressive, and I made a joke and the doctor didn't laugh, and I thought, all right, so it's like that. I'm not afraid of it. I want you to know that because I know you'll read these eventually. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of leaving. There's a difference. The second-to-last folder held one letter. My love, 31 years I've been writing to you without your knowledge. I always meant to tell you. I kept waiting for the right moment, and the right moment was apparently never, or perhaps it was always, and I couldn't see it. I want you to know that when I look back at our life, I don't see the arguments or the hard years. Or the distances. I see you getting your keys at midnight because I wanted the ocean. I see you holding Claire for the first time, so terrified, so gentle. I see you at the kitchen table in the mornings, always the first one up, always made me coffee without asking because you always knew. I have been so well loved. The folders are in the filing cabinet in the closet. I think you'll know when to open them. Margaret. The last folder, year 41, held only a single index card. Her handwriting was shakier than in the earlier letters. She must have written it near the end. It said, "Go find Claire. She's lost too. She just doesn't know how to say it." I called Claire that evening. She answered on the second ring, which surprised me. Claire let things go to voicemail as a matter of principle. "Dad," her voice was careful, braced. "I need to tell you something," I said, "and I need you to listen before you say anything." A pause. "Okay." Your mother kept a filing cabinet in the back of the closet, 31 folders, one for each year of our marriage. I heard her breath change. I read all of them today. I was there for 5 hours. Silence. In year 12, I continued, she kept a photograph of you asleep in the backseat of the wagon. The one on the way back from your grandmother's in Connecticut. You remember that drive. You were 8. She wrote on the back, she wrote that you look like me when you sleep. That. Something softens. I heard it then, the smallest sound, a caught breath, a suppressed something. "Dad." "I'm not calling to argue about the house," I said. "I want to be clear about that. The house is gone, I understand. I'm calling because your mother's last note said you're lost and she asked me to find you." The silence stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then Claire said, in a voice I hadn't heard since she was about 14 years old, "I didn't know how to be there. I didn't know how to I couldn't if I stopped moving, Dad, if I sat down and stopped doing things I was going to." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. "I know," I said. "I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry about the notice. I'm sorry. I thought if I kept organizing things, kept solving problems, it would feel like I was doing something. For her, for you, I didn't know how else to." "You were getting your keys," I said. "What?" "It's something from your mother's letters. I'll explain when I see you." I paused. "I'd like to see you if that's all right." Another silence, then quietly, yeah, that's all right." I still live in the apartment on the second floor. The walls are still beige. The carpet is still the color of old mustard. But Margaret's reading chair is by the window now, where it belongs, and the ceramic birds are arranged on a shelf I put up myself, a little crooked, but I come by that. Honestly, James visits with his family every few months. His kids have taken to calling me Grandpa Dan, with a fervor that suggests they've been coached, and I don't mind being coached into that particular tenderness. His wife makes a lasagna she leaves in my freezer that I ration out across the weeks like treasure. Claire comes on Sundays. This is new. She brings coffee from the place on Main Street, medium black, which she remembered without asking, and we sit in the apartment and sometimes we talk and sometimes we just sit. She's learning to sit still. I'm learning to be less afraid of her efficiency. We're translating each other. 2 Sundays ago, she asked to read the folders. I said yes. I made a copy of every letter, every note, every pressed flower, had them scanned at the library by a young woman named Rosa, who handled them like they were made of light. And I gave Claire the copies in a new binder. She held it for a long moment before she opened it. I went to make coffee and let her have that privately. When I came back, she was on the second letter. Her mascara was doing exactly what it was designed not to do. She didn't try to wipe it away, which is, I think, the bravest thing I've seen her do. She kept everything, Claire said. She kept everything. I didn't know she was like that. Underneath, I mean. I always thought she was, she looked. Up, I always thought she was like me. You got your precision from her, I said, but she kept the folders. Claire looked back at the binder, turned to year 12, found the photograph. I watched her read the words on the back, something softens, and I watched her face do exactly that. Epilogue: what Margaret knew. Here is the thing about 41 years. You stop seeing each other. Not all at once. It happens the way the folder letters describe the early hard years, quietly. Gradually, the erosion of constant seeing until you're looking at someone so familiar they become invisible, the way you stop hearing the clock on the wall until it stops. You have to lose someone to see them again. That's the terrible mathematics of it. But Margaret had kept seeing me. She'd written me down in secret, year after year, preserving the moments I'd already half forgotten, the midnight drives, the broken dishwasher, the beach. In April, and in doing so she had preserved me. She'd held me in all those folders the way you press a flower flat and still, a record of something alive. I think about her every day, every hour if I'm being accurate. I think about her reading glasses on the nightstand and the way she sang off-key, and the specific sound of her laugh when something struck her as genuinely, unexpectedly funny, a full-body event, that laugh. Unguarded and total. I keep expecting grief to ease the way people keep promising it will. What I've found instead is that grief doesn't ease, it deepens. But in the deepening it becomes something more than pain. It becomes the full weight of what you had, and the full weight of what you had is staggering. It's enormous. It's the kind of enormous that can either crush you or hold you up, depending on how you stand. I've been practicing standing differently. Claire and I drove out to Route 9 last month to clear out more of the storage unit. We worked side by side for 3 hours, sorting and lifting and deciding what mattered. At one point she found a box of her own childhood drawings, the ones James had kept, that Margaret had kept, that survived every move and purge for 30 years, and she sat down on the concrete floor with the box in her lap and went through every single page. I didn't rush her. I found Margaret's gardening tools against the wall, the trowel, the pruners, the kneeling pad. She'd used every spring in the garden we no longer had. I'm going to plant a small container garden on the apartment balcony this spring. Some herbs, maybe some of the salvia she always loved, the kind that comes back every year without asking permission, reliable and stubborn and quietly beautiful. Something like her. I'll put it in the sun. I'll probably overwater it at first. I'll figure it out eventually. That seems to be the general plan, the only plan any of us have ever really had, if we're being honest about it. You figure it out, you keep going. You get your keys. On the last night I spent in the Millbrook garden apartment before Claire, insisting, efficient, loving in her new way, helped me move to a house with a proper garden and a spare room, where the ceramic birds have their own shelf in the light. I sat in Margaret's reading chair and held the first folder. Year 1, the midnight drive to the beach. I could hear her somehow in the silence of that room. Not literally, I want to be careful here, because I am not a man given to magical thinking, but in the way that a room holds the shape of whoever filled it. She had filled everything she touched. She still does. I folded the letter back along its original crease, the one she'd made in 1984, and I put it back in the folder, and I held the folder against my chest for a moment. Then I got my keys. Daniel Calloway, Millbrook, New York.